that if there's any possibility of legalization, that the normal organizations in these various and sundry states should know what medical marijuana is about. You know, when this first came out in Oregon, and they showed the 9 conditions for which it was going to be useful, I said, "Boy, this is a bunch of snake oil. This ain't going to do that." And so, much to my surprise, and that's exactly what it amounted to. I mean, as a professor of pharmacology and toxicology, and then having somebody tell me all of these this works for all 12 of these different diseases. There's no substance that works for all 12 of these different diseases. That just doesn't happen. But it does. I know we got CB1 receptors and CB2 receptors, but it appears to me, because of all of the various diseases, I think that this works on the cell walls of these various organs. That's the only explanation I can think of. This was one of the few times in my career that I ever got a standing ovation. That was yay! You guys got it. Thank you. You bet.
Mark turned himself into custody at the court at 9 a.m. We went upstairs to the restaurant to discuss, our waiting, and at 9:30 or so, our lawyer got a phone call saying that the bail hearing set for 2 p.m. had been canceled because the minister had issued a decision. She refused to let him know. We waited for another 20 minutes or so for the actual document to be sent to our lawyer's phone, and upon reading that, we've discovered the minister has ordered Mark to be extradited on all 3 counts, which goes against what the United States and the Canadian Justice Department had asked him to do. He had been told it would be wise to just extradite Mark on the 1 count he has already pled guilty to ensure he is protected by jurisdiction and the extradition agreement, that he wouldn't serve more time than the agreed to 5 years. But now the minister has decided to send him on all 3 counts, which in my opinion leaves it open for other jurisdictions in the United States to charge him for the other 2 counts that he has now been ordered extradited on. And all 3 charges carried 10 years mandatory minimum up to life, and now my concern is that once he's sent down there, he might get sent to a different state where he could be charged and convicted for up to 20 additional years. So I pray that doesn't happen, and I'm extraordinarily disappointed in the Minister of Justice, as are thousands and thousands of Canadians and people abroad.
Why do you think the minister's taken this approach?
In my personal opinion, and I know that a lot of people think it's unwise to say, but I would say that Robert Nicholson is an evil person. And evil is used to describe someone who willfully makes others suffer, even when they haven't harmed anyone. An evil person is someone who continues wars abroad and at home. An evil person builds prisons instead of hospitals to house non-violent, peaceful people instead of the old and sick. An evil person advocates policies like the United States has, which are backwards, such as mandatory minimums and expensive failure. And an evil person is someone who allows the carnage and suffering of the drug war to continue. The minister and anyone else who advocates continued prohibition of cannabis is supporting organized crime. They're supporting the continuation of shootings and murders all across the world related to drug prohibition. My husband tried for a decade to end that death and that suffering with his seed selling so he could fund the movement, fund peaceful democratic change, running in elections, ballot initiatives, court challenges, and he never hurt anyone. So this minister to decide to send my husband to a country he never went to suffer and languish in a jail cell in the worst prison system in the world where they incarcerate a quarter of the world's prisoners. My husband doesn't deserve that, and I would say the Minister of Justice is evil, and his policies that he continues to advocate, these tough on crime policies, are going to hurt so many Canadians who are currently free amongst us, harming no one, and I would say that's evil.
Do you think that he's actually reneged on a deal? It's your understanding with just the one charge that he had a deal there and that he's now...
Well, Mark had agreed to the deal with the United States, so Mark and the feds down in Washington State had agreed to a 5-year plea deal should he be extradited. It was then the file given to the Minister of Justice to determine if Mark would be extradited on that one count, and he had the option of all 3 counts, but as I said, the Americans and our own Justice Department memorandum said 1 count would be sufficient, but the minister has gone above and beyond that, and again, I think it's just to punish my husband.
Is this a tough on crime aspect of the justice system? Or do you think this would be the motivation?
I'd say that they're just sick and tired of my husband, and they're sick and tired of people calling and relentlessly saying don't punish him or anyone else, because my husband is just one man being punished in this war on drugs out of millions of people. I'm punished. I'm going to be suffering. I'm going to be sleeping alone and worrying to death about my husband, and that's punishment on me. And this minister, he's tough on crime, but really it's all about punishment. This government is an evangelical government, somewhat like George Bush's, and we know that George Bush's people came up here to help this conservative government win and draft their policies, and that's why a lot of the laws being introduced are American-style legislation. A lot of it reflects what happened in the United States previously, and now the Americans are changing their laws. They're getting rid of mandatory minimums. They've realized tough on crime doesn't work, and they're getting more progressive, whereas our government is left in the old ages, and they just want punishment. They just want suffering and hellfire and damnation. They're not about rehabilitation or helping people at all. They just want to make people suffer.
Are you going to be able to see him before he goes? What are you hearing now as far as your accessibility?
I hope that I'll be able to go visit him at North Fraser pre-trial before he is taken down to the border. I don't know how soon it will happen. It could be tonight. It could be a week from now. I feel terrible that when I saw him go off, I really believed that he would come out again later today, and I wish I'd been giving him a bigger kiss, maybe a bigger hug.
Just the fact that he's going to be down in the States now, and in some ways they're hoping to send a tough on crime message. But are you hoping that it might backfire? That you might be able to intensify the lobbying and the profile?
I think that it will. A lot of Canadians for the past 5 years have been getting more and more engaged and involved in politics because they see the way that our government is taking our country, and it's not Canadian. It's a very scary direction we're going in, and I think that this will help get people worked up and more active in politics. I'm running federally in the election with the Green Party. I will make sure that the Conservatives are going to be my main target, and we're going to try and make sure that everyone gets out there and removes this government from power, because they are just out to make people suffer needless pain.
But what's your option now as far as an appeal is out of the question as far as trying to reverse?
He's not allowed to appeal the extradition order on the count that he agreed to, the plea deal. However, I want to talk to my lawyer about appealing the decision to extradite him on the other 2 charges, seeing as that opens up the possibility of a much, much worse punishment, and considering the Americans and the Justice Department told the minister not to do it on all 3, and he's gone ahead and done that, I think that's a very bad idea, and we will be focusing on trying to maybe change that. I'm going to be fighting for Mark no matter what, whatever it takes. Until I see him again, I will not stop.
And Jody, on the 5 years, is the 5 years in custody, or is there an option of that could be less?
In the United States, they only get early release at 85% or 80% of their sentence. So Mark will be there for at least 4 years and 2 months unless I am able to get him transferred here to Canada. And that rests on the Public Safety Minister, currently Vic Taves of the Conservative Party. He's the one to decide if Mark can come back home. But again, this government is starting to introduce legislation to prevent Canadians from being brought home from abroad. And again, it's all about punishment and making people suffer.
And so how much attention are you going to put on that aspect of trying to get them to
That will be our main campaign, because I find it unlikely that we'll be able to prevent him from being extradited or sentenced on the county pledge.